Vince versus Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Vince of Geekvolution, and welcome to Vince versus what? Vince versus Washington, D.C. So, this is video number 3 in the honeymoon set of videos. I'll do one more. So, this video is on Washington, D.C., or at least my trip to Washington, D.C., and the next video will be on Philadelphia, the last installment of the honeymoon videos. So, we had quite an epic honeymoon. But, let's see here. So, we took a day trip from Atlantic City to Washington, D.C., and I have to say that I plan on going back to Washington, D.C. at some point in the future. Because I found a lot of stuff moving while I was there. I thought it was really interesting. Now, we drive into Washington, D.C., we park at Union Station, or at least in a parking garage adjacent to Union Station, whatever. And then we walk through Union Station to go to these bus tour things, because they had these, or for those of you who have not been to Washington, D.C., they have bus tours, and the company that we used was Big Bus. And it's called a hop-on, hop-off bus tour. So they drive around the city to the major sites, and they stop at the major sites and let you hop off if you want to. Or you can ride and just ride with them the entire way if you just wanted to see the stuff but not necessarily go into and onto and around the stuff. So that's kind of a neat deal. I was kind of excited about that. And when we go back, we'll probably do it again and stop at all these places, because it makes sense to me to have a bus to take you back and forth from places when you get to the far reaches of things. But anyway, so we're walking through Union Station, and I see this sign that says Phantom Comics, and I thought, oh, cool. So said, sweetie pie, can I go to this comic book store? She says, yeah. So we made it a point to go to Midtown Comics in New York City. Had Atlantic City had a comic book store, I would have gone, but they did not. So when we were in Washington, D.C., we just happened upon Phantom Comics, because it's in Union Station. And so I went. Apparently they had another location which was not conducive to foot traffic, and they moved their operation into Union Station. Apparently they locked into this new location. And so I go to Phantom Comics, and first of all, it's not a big store, but it has a lot of product tastefully displayed. They have a lot of shelving and a lot of stuff available. So despite the fact that it's a small store, it is not anywhere near, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. Despite the fact that it's a small store, it has a lot available, and it's a really interesting store. And so I kind of get excited when I go to a place and I see like comics everywhere, like from floor to ceiling. I'm like, and so in New York, at Midtown Comics, the big thing they had was statues. And Phantom Comics, and Phantom spelled with an F, is or for you guys. Phantom spelled with an F, Phantom Comics, its big thing was indie comics. Now, everybody has Marvel and DC, and for people that say, we have indie comics, and they mean Dark Horse and Image, at this point, Hellboy and Walking Dead are big enough that you wouldn't call Image or Dark Horse indie comics. They're kind of pretty big. So, there was stuff there that I'd never even heard of before. And there was stuff there that you just don't see in your typical store that tends to only carry major comic books, or Marvel, DC, and then the major Dark Horse and Image and Dynamite and IDW. But these guys had more of it. They have lots of individual, interesting, separate titles, and that really excited me. And that's not to say that Midtown Comics didn't have that. They surely did, but this was the feature of this store. And if you want Marvel and DC, they have it available, but the rest of it's really interesting to me. So it excited me. And the guy, or there were 2 people working that day, and there were 2 people hanging out, so there's 4 people in the store. The gentleman, I forget his name, because well, it's funny. There are two people working. There was a guy and there was a girl. The girl's name was Esther, and Esther was sitting behind the counter, and this guy comes over to me and he wants to try to sell me on this book that he's really excited about, and they have it on display largely because all of the workers had read it, or at least most of the workers had read it, and they really enjoyed it, and they wanted to try to sell this book because they thought it was really artistically sound. And he described things to me. It's called Asterios. It's spelled like asteroids without the D, or I guess for you guys, whatever. So it's Asterios, asteroids without the D. That's how it's spelled, Asterios. And it's by I forget the name of the artist, but it's by the guy who did the art for Frank Miller's Batman Year One, which is it's a great story. And the Asterios, apparently, like they do really interesting visual things that you don't. It's very rare when you get everything kind of culminating in an artistic piece. I don't know how good the story is. I've not read it, but I would like to. So, and it's really not a bad deal for how much story you get. It's really a pretty decent price point. And so, Asterios is he tried to sell this book based on how the artist really did things interestingly with the story. So it wasn't just trying to make the prettiest book. It was, in fact, it was kind of a little cartoony type drawings. And I don't mean like Looney Tunes. I mean like the same. Well, I don't want to speak poorly of it. I mean, it's just there's simpler character designs, and it's not trying to be photorealistic. It's trying to do something with the art that's a little different. Like, for example, when the book starts out, you have these two characters who are eventually going to fall in love. Sorry, ruining it for you. But they're eventually going to fall in love, and they're drawn a little askew. They're drawn with kind of rough edges. They're drawn with lines separating. But as the couple comes together, their lines come together. So it's interesting when an entire piece can be artistic, not just based on the fact that it is a story, but not just based on the fact that it uses art, but based on how these two things really integrate together. So, like, for example, the new Batman 1966 using pop art stylings. Sure, a lot of it's classic comic, but pop art was huge in the 60s. And I'm not saying it's not still huge. I'm just saying that you had a lot of stuff of the like. I mean, Andy Warhol, yada yada. Actually, I'm not sure when Andy Warhol's around, but it's a strong choice for the Batman 1966 comic. Anyway, moving on. I've not read that one either. I was thumbing through caps. But, so Phantom Comics, while I'm standing there, and this guy whose name I forget is telling me all about this book, he looks up to get a second opinion from Esther, and he kind of stares at her for a minute, takes him a second to remember her name, and says, Esther. And she says, did you really just have to think about what my name is? How long have we worked together? And I thought that was kind of funny. And so it's amusing that I remember Esther's name, but not his name. So I'm sorry, dude, whose name I don't remember, but you were very nice and very friendly, and you sold me. I'm totally going to read this book. So, so Phantom Comics, there was another couple people in there. I didn't get the name of one of the other people, but the name of the person that I did get, because he gave me his card, is Chris Scott. Chris Scott. Boom. Very nice card. And Chris Scott, his website is Chris James Scott, all one word, .blogspot.com. So he was very nice, and we had a very interesting conversation about Superman, and that kind of sucked everybody in the room into the conversation. So it was a lot of fun. That was a good store. I highly recommend it. Now, then we actually get out into DC. I know I talked at length about the food in just to a certain extent in New York, and a lot in the Atlantic City video, but in this one we really didn't have a lot of time to go in search of places. We would have went down to the dock and tried some more seafood there, but alas, we did not have a lot of time. So we spent the day on the hop-on, hop-off bus tour, which I don't remember if I explained that earlier or not. Oh well, it's a bus that stops at all the sites and you can hop on or hop off. It's pretty neat. I'm going to do it again. Anyway, we only stopped at 2 of the sites. Basically, it stops at all the sites, so you see everything, but you don't get a good look at everything from the street. So there's a reason to hop off. So I saw the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, but I didn't get a good look at it. But so we stopped at 2 places in particular. We hopped off. And the first place we stopped was the Native American Museum, which was really interesting. Now, my dad's a history teacher, and he's taught all of these, like history, social studies, psychology. He teaches these things, and he gets deeply interested in Native American cultures. So when I saw that there was a Native American museum that was a big feature, I thought my dad would have some sorrow if we didn't stop here. So my wife and I, we got off and we went into this building. And what's interesting is that there's no corners in this building at all. Which is not to say that it's a circle. It's really a pretty interestingly shaped building. And there's no corners because apparently one or some or several, I don't know how many cultures believe it, but excuse me, there is a belief that spirits, or among Native American cultures, that spirits live in corners. So they've rounded all of the edges of this building so as that the spirits could not live there. So that's interesting to me. That they took out all the corners. Now that made navigating the particularly the busy exhibits, it made navigating the exhibits kind of difficult. But at one point we saw all but one of the floors, and my wife said, "You wanted a hat. I'm going to go get you a hat." So I'm wearing the hat. But so she said, "Well, essentially, we were on a bus with an open top, and I didn't want to burn on my head, so I want to wear a hat." I have a lot of really light hair, and anywho, so I keep it short. I didn't want to burn on the top of my head. So we go into this place, and I go to the last floor by myself, and I get a little lost, but I keep figuring, if I just hug the walls, I'll eventually make it out. Because I kind of looked at the time and said, man, I need to get going. Where am I? But they had a lot of really interesting exhibits. They had one exhibit that I thought was really interesting, was about how the Lakota believe in like seven essentially personality traits that and they called them like 7 teachings from the 7 fathers or 7 grandfathers, and it was interesting. And they had animals paired with these like totem animals for these different traits. Like the turtle was truth, and the bear was courage, and the wolf is loyalty, and the bison is wisdom, and the bird is love, and the yeti was honesty, and there was something else. Anyway, but it was really enjoyable just to see their beliefs. And my dad, also being a big antique gun enthusiast, he's not the world's greatest shooter, but he loves the history behind him. So he's a great guy. He's one of my favorite people. He might even be my favorite person. Well, I'm married now, but whatever. So it's weird to pick out, that's my favorite person. My dad's kind of my hero. So he would have loved this display. They had, and this sounds kind of shocking to just say it as plain as day, but they had an exhibit in the Native American Museum that was the guns that have been used by, and the guns that have, or at least examples of the guns that have been used by and have been used on Native American cultures. And they had this whole wall of guns, and they had little blurbs about each of them, and what they were used for, when they were used, who they were used by, and sometimes who they were used on. And it was really steeped in history. And I'll say this, that it's sad, or like it's almost more shocking, and I think that's a good thing, because sometimes there's trying to impress the shocking nature of past events on somebody by trying to make it sound shocking. Like, this is really terrible that this happened. That almost adds a certain level of insincerity to an exhibit. But just putting it plain as day, say this group of people were shot by this group of people that essentially didn't like them. Using this gun, like it went from extremely old guns to like the conquistadors used to extremely new guns like machine guns. So it had this wide array of guns, and the machine gun was used on some modern group of Indians, and it was or Native Americans, and it was really kind of sad. It just the fact that that it was stated that way made it more shocking, and or at least more shocking to me. And I thought that was really interesting. How to kind of evoke emotion from people. Now, they also, and I didn't get a chance to partake in this because I needed to get going, but they also had a food court for these different Native American cultures, like they had like the Great Plains and the Northern Woodland Indians or Native Americans. Old habits die hard. It's hard to stop saying certain things, but whatever. So they had this food court, and they had like pulled bison meat, or buffalo meat, or whatever. It was I forget which one it said, but they had and the Northern Woodland one, they had like this cucumber salad, and man, did I want to try that because I love cucumbers. But I had to get running anyway. So my wife picked me up this hat, and it kept my head nice and non-sunburny. So the only other place that we stopped off was the Lincoln Memorial, and from the Lincoln Memorial we walked and saw a couple more memorials, and we walked over to the Vietnam Memorial, and it's a very nice memorial, and I saw this kid, and it upset me, because I feel like when you're a kid, somebody should instill respect for memorials and things, because you know if your name was on that wall, you wouldn't want somebody defacing it. But and I kind of examined the wall after the kid he'd taken something pointy and hard and dragged it across the wall of the Vietnam Memorial, and it clacked on people's names as it went. And I guess the kid doesn't know what the importance of the wall is, but I mean, that's why somebody should tell him. And I almost stepped in and said, "Hey, don't deface this wall. Do not do that, because this is a wall of significance. This is a wall that has meaning. So it was really sad to me to see that happen. I almost couldn't appreciate the impact of it. I mean, maybe in some way I did get the impact of it because I saw somebody doing that. But so the kid basically did that and ran off. But it was really sad to me to see a little bit of disrespect for something. Anyway, moving on, we went to the Lincoln Memorial, and the Lincoln Memorial was, I don't know, it had an emotional impact on me. I couldn't believe, and we went to the Lincoln Memorial before the Vietnam Memorial, so maybe it was a little bit of a, I was still feeling a little sensitive, I don't know. As we walked up to the Lincoln Memorial, when you see pictures of it, things are well lit. You see up inside of the Lincoln Memorial, it's you know it's huge because you see scale things, but it's a different story to walk up to the Lincoln Memorial with those pillars and the building, and then in shadow there is the statue of Lincoln, and seeing that, I was touched. I don't really understand how I can see the picture and not be as touched as seeing it in person, but based on that, I was really interested to go back and see pretty much everything else. At some point in the future, I'm going to go see all the Smithsonian stuff. I'm going to go see all of this stuff. And my wife and I will truly enjoy it when we get our full trip into Washington, D.C. But I guess we did see that Albert Einstein statue. That was really cool, and it's not photorealistic Albert Einstein. It's kind of intended to be a little more craftsy, which is interesting to me since it's at the Institute of Science or something. I forget. I'm just a fountain of knowledge with all the names of these things. I'm sorry, guys, but so really that was the end of it. We got on the bus and we went around and we saw varying other places. And we had a good day. And I really enjoyed Washington, D.C. And at some point I plan on going back. So, yeah. The big thing for me was the monuments. No surprise. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Tune in next time when I talk about Philadelphia on